Hi, everybody. Can you hear me in the back? Yes, 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 yes. All good? Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Well, does anyone here not know what a Docker container is? Good. You? Okay. As a friend of mine, Richard Brown from OpenSUSE, said, is Docker containers are iframes for servers. I thought that was a good quote. It makes sense to me. The idea of a Docker container is you get all the packages, everything you need, all the libraries, all the dependencies in one container. You put it on a server somewhere and you say, run the container, and off it goes, and you're fine. It's a bit different from the packaging model where Henne Vogelsang, also from OpenSUSE, I don't know if he's here. There you are. Hi, Henne. He said it's like herding cats. And why? Because you've got all these dependencies, you've got a lot of stuff going on, and you have to take care of them as a package maintainer, which is obviously a different thing to do than if you're a software developer. So I'm going to talk about those two things, on the basis of a real-life case, something that I had to do for clients, because I think it's valid and it's informative. This is me. Hi, Robin Edgar. I'm an IT consultant, and I also like machinery. I like flying planes. And if you look at the left picture, you'll see that the cockpit of the plane I fly is like most light aircraft. It's very simple. Well, maybe it looks complex, but basically it's simple. All the instruments, they're air pressure, gyroscopes, they're compass-based. And the airplane itself is built from wood, so it's not these hugely complex Boeing 7s or big Airbusses that you fly in nowadays. They're simple things, and I like things simple. I like distributions where I can just log in, install it, it's easy. I get my package, I say something like apt-get install or yum install, whatever, and off it goes. It's easy, it works. Unfortunately, this is not reality. The reality is that it's a bit more complex and that this can go horribly wrong occasionally. So first I want to make a disclaimer, and that is it's not about guys making great software, because making great software is what software developers do, and I'm very glad they do that. But they're software developers. Generally, they're not Docker creators or distribution packagers. And there's loads and loads of distributions you can choose from, which makes it only more complex. And Henne had a slide where you saw all the distributions just for Linux. And then when you go outside of Linux and into enterprise, then that picture gets a lot more logos. So my problem is that like these software developers, they make absolutely fantastic stuff. And I want to use it, but it can be really difficult to get to use. And that's not necessarily the fault of the software developer, but it is something that the software developer very much has to keep in the back of their mind once they've made the software. Now, I'm going to do something you're not supposed to do in presentations. You're going to have a look at slides with loads of text on it, loads of information, loads of system administration commands and output. And it's going to be almost unreadable. That's okay. I'll explain what's on it very quickly. And it's not the idea that you read it and write it down and copy it and say, oh, thank you for teaching me how to install Sweet CRM via Bitnami Docker container, because that's just not what this is. This is about showing you the disconnect between having gotten a great software package, which I've seen on a demo, I've decided this is something a company, a client of mine, needs to be able to use, wants to be able to use, and then suddenly you get into this personal development hell where you go, oh dear, why won't it just install? So hopefully there's some lessons you guys can take away from this. And the three software packages I've decided to talk about are Colab, Sweet CRM, and Nextcloud. Has any of you guys used this, any of these packages? Look, there's a small community there. Has any of you guys ever at all been frustrated by installing them? There's one. The rest, not so much. Now, one of the reasons I might be a bit more frustrated about installing these than the average user is because I'm installing them for a corporate client. It's not just my little web server or my virtual machine. It's not my home system. It's a company who has employees who need to be able to use this, who have forward-facing points. So that means they're very susceptible to attack, and they need to be secured from attack. So I'm thinking slightly differently than a home user would. So I do things like I want to separate the database from the application. I want that to be on 2 different machines, and I want it to be properly firewalled. I want to have audit trails of how I installed things. I want to have audit trails of who accesses things. And I want to make sure that it's secure. So we're going to start with Colab. And if you look at, let's see if the link works. No, of course it doesn't. That would be too easy. The documentation for Colab, I'll get it from somewhere else. Oh, now the whole thing is gone on the fritz. Oops. Well, that's not happy. I'm stuck in Alt-Tab.
You have split screen?
Yeah.
This is like... I'm not sure. Is it missing?
Right, I'll just take it out.
Yeah, perhaps
that works best, I think. Okay, I'll look it up on this and then click it in. Because apparently it doesn't like being projected. Let's see if this is any better. We're going to have to move this here. If you look at the documentation, it says, well, you know, it's quite easy. You install the EPIL repository. You install some configuration information. And import a GPG, do some yum stuff, and then go install Colab. Now, there's 2 more websites, and they're about like 2 commands long each, which say, yeah, no, it's really easy, and you should be able to do this. So let's have a look in reality, what happens. So the first thing is, I thought, well, because I want to use an enterprise system, I'm going to use something called Plesk. Which is a control panel built on CentOS 7. You spin up a machine with it, a virtual machine. It's really easy, and it comes with Plesk install. Now, the first thing you need to do is log in, and put some stuff in, enter an administrator info, create a web space, create a couple of SSL certificates, and the SSL certificate stuff, that's all the stuff at the bottom. And it says, yeah, no, okay, off we go. Well, then you go on to websites and domains. I want to secure it, so I've got this kernel care thing, and I want to have access to the server over SSH. And then I go into the extensions, the extension catalog, and the first problem I run into, which is not on here, is if you search for Colab, you won't find it in Plesk. Oh. First of all, because you're looking at the add-ons bit of Plesk, and second of all, because it's called premium email. So you have to search for premium email. Okay, well, you know, found premium email. And then I noticed that, when I update the Plesk system, it gives me a couple of errors for the automatic updaters after I've installed it. And the version of Colab it has installed is definitely an ancient one. So I want it to update. Well, there's no other way to go about it than to restart the server. Well, then once the server is restarted, you go into it. That's why we enabled SSH earlier. And, well, there's a Plesk shows an error called to undefined method, which is obviously really, really clear error message. You have to run Plesk installer, select release current, reinstall patch, upgrade installed components. Well, once you've done that, you can't surf back to the Plesk machine. Oh, that's interesting. So you go to Tools and Settings, and then you install or upgrade it, and then you say, all right, you know, I want to upgrade Onyx from 17.0 to 17.5. Who knows why it didn't do that when you told the updater to update, but it doesn't. And then you continue on to your Plesk settings and your premium email settings. And you think, okay, this is cool. And then you realize that, because it's running a Roundcube instance, I'm going to need to have a new SSL domain certificate, not just for the Plesk server, but for roundcube. Your host name. And then you run into an error that it just won't generate a certificate for some reason. And then it says, well, all right, no, that's right. There's a problem. We can't generate certificates while premium email is being used. So you have to go through Plesk, change the webmail from premium to roundcube. To Horde, and then it generate a certificate. Then you can go back and select Roundcube as being the default email system, and then you can connect the generated certificate to Roundcube. Now there's also a problem because every now and again websites will stop responding on the Plesk machine. And, there's an answer to that. It's nginx not running properly. Yeah, some people are nodding. I've seen that. But, if you're me and it's the first time you're running this, it was quite confusing. So, you have to go back in there and you have to run those scripts at the top and then make sure that that nginx is enabled by systemctl, which you kind of expect that Plesk has done, but no. So underneath is the kind of errors it gives you. It gives you a configuration file test failed. Yeah, and it failed to start up. That's when I kind of said, maybe I need to do something else. Because I already had this huge list of to-dos, stuff I needed to do. So for example, one of the things is, there's a PHP value problem, which also comes up. It's a dependency, so you'd expect it to be resolved. But no, you have to turn suexec off. So I said, okay. I've seen the documentation. I could do this by hand. So here I go. First I epel install epel release. Then I say yum -y update. And then I see there's 486 updates. Well, I go get a cup of coffee. I come back. By the way, I hope you like my command prompt. It's a really nice MS-DOS one, which I don't use, but okay. Look pretty. And then, there's all these firewall rules I have to put in. Fair enough, it's the firewall. And I have to install some plugin priorities. And then I get a PHP MySQL conflicts with PHP MySQL ND. Now, let's think about why I'm getting this error. I'm actually installing on the recommended, by Colab, on the recommended OS. So I have to uninstall PHP MySQL, and then I have to reinstall PHP MySQL ND, which to me is a scary thing to do because Plesk uses MySQL. So just uninstalling it, I don't know, maybe it will or maybe it won't delete the tables. I hope not. But anyway, we're here. So I'm finally at the point where I can say, install Colab. And I say, set up Colab, and I get a huge list of stuff I have to fill in. Well, it's not that bad. I have some stuff I have to fill in, but, some of the things like, for example, group, I don't know, what is this group? Well, they use it, apparently, for an LDAP entry or a domain. So I say, okay. Well, one of the problems is if I make a mistake while filling this in, and I'm afraid it's the second one, it does populate the 389 directory service. Colab populates that. So if I rerun the Colab setup, it can't go over the 389 directory service. Well, it took me a little while to figure out how to do that. So my first answer is, well, restore a snapshot before you did the Colab setup. And then finally I figured out is remove ds.pl and then -a -i -d colab, which, it took me a little while to figure out because I've never used the 389 directory service. Now I have another problem, and that is that Colab wants to use a root MySQL user, and I don't want it to be a root MySQL user because Plesk is the root MySQL user. So there's a workaround for that, and then there's another a problem with the clam, which is something about viruses. I don't know if you guys know clam. So there's a whole load of stuff that I figured out that you need to do to be able to get it to recognize clam, and then I go to a job for HTTP service, failed, error, and then it says, it's a suexec problem. I'm going, wait, I disabled suexec. So how can this be a problem? No, it just doesn't like PHP values. So, all right, you've got to figure out another way to disable suexec. And I'm like, what? No. So I talked to my client and I said, look, I've spent 20 hours figuring out all this random stuff, but I also have a real problem, and that is that if I have this hand-installed Colab and it wants to update, what's it going to do with the root, with the MySQL access? I don't know. What about the Plesk integration? I have no idea, because so far just updating Plesk has proved to be a problem. Let's see if I want to continue on this vein. And the answer is no. No, we're going to use something else. We're going to use this thing called Nextcloud. And Nextcloud is also a beautiful product. It's highly extensible. It's basically kind of evolved around putting files up and down. And Colab is obviously much more than that. But, you know, there's all these extensions you can put into Nextcloud. You can put your email in there. You can put your agenda in there. You can put to-dos in there. So, you know, you can kind of turn it into a Colab. So, all right, I'm all happy. And I spin up a Leap machine. And, well, here we go. First, well, there's a link with the documentation, and most of this is copied from that documentation. It's nice. There's an OpenSUSE page which tells me how to install it. So, you know, you go through it, and you update YAST twice. Then you set up your network, you enable SSH, and then you go in there, and then you say zipper install Nextcloud. And then you say zipper install loads of dependencies that should have been called by zipper install Nextcloud. So, for example, it needs Apache and MariaDB. Oh, yeah. Anything that needs a database is going to need a database. So why doesn't the package install it? I don't really know. But as Henna said, just creating a package is difficult. And I'm absolutely sure that these guys at Nextcloud and at Colab, these guys are very good at creating software, because I have used the software, and I've just installed it on my personal machine, which is easy, and it didn't require separation of MySQL on a different machine, and it didn't require all these complex firewall rules. So, you know, it worked first time, really. But as soon as I start doing things I need to do slightly differently, it just doesn't. And then when I go to this one, I see, no, install Nextcloud, and it doesn't seem to have done much of anything, because I have to go and install zipper and new repos, and then go into Python before I have to decide myself to activate MySQL. So I have to, by hand, run MySQL secure installation and fill out all the stuff, saying my password is going to be this, and delete the test databases, that stuff. Now, here we go. Here's a really quite nice one. And this is basically where I say, all right, first I start my MySQL service, and then I create a database, and then I have to change PHP. And there's a lot of stuff I have to change in PHP. These are quite a lot of lines to put on a presentation, but there's no way I could make it any shorter. And you're sitting there going, well, you know, why doesn't the package do this for me? There will probably be reasons somewhere by someone, but this one doesn't. So anyways, finding these values and putting them in, that takes a little while. Now, then we get to something called update. The Leap installer installs Nextcloud 11 point something. And then Nextcloud says, well, we've got this beautiful little updater. So you go into the admin thing, and it says update. Oh, there's an update ready for you. You go, yes, I'm going to get the latest version. It's going to do it for me. And you get this huge list of errors. And you're going, wow, that's a lot of errors. Let's work through them. So, you know, you start working through them. And then you decide they're all permission errors. So first you start going, well, it's most of the files in one directory, so I'll chmod 770 in that directory for now. I'll write down the old permissions, and then I'll change it back once I'm done. And then you realize that, no, basically there's no way to do that. So you chmod the whole directory, and you update it, and it still doesn't work. Yeah, well, of course not everything's chmod 770, but, you know, for a laugh, you're doing this. So, yeah, no, you see some of the moves, and then at one point you see rm-r serve www.htdocs Nextcloud. That's where I give up. That's where I said, no, I've had it. I don't want this updater anymore. What I'm going to do, I'm going to follow the documentation, which is neatly underneath on the OpenSUSE page, saying, wow, how to do it by hand. You download a zip file, you unzip it, you chown it, and then you go in. Well, at that point, I walked into the thing and I said, yeah, but the permissions are still not set exactly properly, and because I've installed the package Nextcloud, at one point, maybe, hopefully, there will be an update for package Nextcloud. What happens then? Because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be running the version that I'm running. So will it try to install an earlier version of Nextcloud over my by hand downloaded and updated thing, or will it, you have no idea, what will it do with the file permissions? Because it'll probably put them back to where it found them, which means next time I try to update internally in Nextcloud, it'll say, oh, no, file permissions. So I said, I had a discussion with my employer, and then I also had a look at the virtual host provider we used, and they don't actually allow you to spin up a virtual machine with OpenSUSE Leap. So, okay, well, that might solve a couple of problems. Let's try Tumbleweed. Because Tumbleweed is awesome. It's, rolling releases, and there's lots of stuff. So, okay, here we go. Well, my very first error is that I'm trying to update it using YAS2, and it says, no, it doesn't work due to display limitations. Okay, fair enough. This is a problem, but nothing I can't fix. So, off you go into security and users, and you create firewall rules but by hand. And then you use Zipper and install, again, a whole load of stuff. Because now we know we're doing it by hand. There is no Nextcloud package in the Tumbleweed repository, so you have to do it this way. So you create your database, you change your values, you enable all the modules, and then you go into, you do all the permissions, you download it, you visit the server IP, you fill in your admin and your password, and you configure the database with all the stuff that you've done, and ta-da! Happy life. It's amazing. It just works. But I haven't used the package. I've downloaded a zip from Nextcloud itself. So, once we've got that, let's configure it. No, let's not do that here. I'm just showing you that using a packaging system to download a product can be more difficult than most users are willing to accept. So then we have Docker containers. Now, Docker containers are awesome. You have something called Docker. You put it on, and off it goes. Well, let's have a look here. We have CentOS 7, because that's the recommended system. You create a user, you have to install all this stuff. Python needs to be updated. You need to enable all these services. So you're basically configuring the OS. You do your MySQL installation, and then you want to be able to make sure that root can access from any IP. And why is that? Because it comes, MySQL, when you set up a Docker network, you don't know what IP you're going to get. But you need your Docker container to populate a database. So here we go. We create a volume, we create a network in Docker, and then we need to populate the database. So, well, there's problems with that because the way that this Docker image is set up is it says, well, we have our own database, we have a Bitnami Docker image you can use, and I'm saying, no, but I actually want my database server because I have one. So that creates all these problems. Now, then we also get into firewall problems where basically I'm using firewall commands to create firewall rules which don't display in all of the things. So, for example, it will list itself in firewall command, but not in IP tables. So, yeah, I flush all the tables and I keep going because we're going to make this thing work. So here we have a Docker compose file. And there's all this kind of stuff in it. You see what the capitals are. They're basically parameters you can pass to Docker in order for it to use certain usernames, locations, and ideas. But you also want to make sure that port 80 is closed. Now, you can't just delete port 80, so you use nginx to forward port 80 to 443 and then 443 to 444 for large, obscure reasons. Down here you say Docker compose, it goes up, and then you need to find out, then you can find out what IP your Docker network is in, and then you need to basically go back into MySQL, change all of the MySQL IP addresses so that only from there they can be accessed. Now you have nginx, which I'm using as a proxy forwarder. I'm now going to go really fast because I'm running out of time. well, we get bad gateways, and then you have to generate an error, and then from the error you can then put it into SE Linux and say, well, this is an exception. And there's a whole lot more, but like finally you get there, and then you get to some disturbing conclusions. One is that Docker is not the panacea everyone says it is, and it's not easy to choose what you want. Document what you're doing, please, developers. Document what everything is, and think about other ways that that distributions and users might want to use your product. Think about all the parameters of your dependencies, so MySQL, for example, and find a way to let people put those things into your package or Docker thing. I haven't even started talking about updates, but they're a story all by themselves. So remember that things are going to update. So I'm really happy that you guys are creating the software, but really think hard about about how you're going to deploy it. I want to thank the organization at Doors Klok for having us. I want to thank you guys for listening, and I would say questions, but we ran out of time.
We actually...
Oh, have we?
Yes, we actually do have some time for a quick question, so if anyone is inspired...
Is anyone inspired? There's a man.
I can shout, it's fine. Are you aware of snaps?
Snaps, no.
Because you were just speaking about Nextcloud, and there's this thing called Nextcloud Snap.
Okay.
And so in the book, you can go snap install Nextcloud, and you get everything, and auto updates, and it's...
If you use Snap, it's a bit like Plesk, someone else said, then you should just say Snap install Nextcloud. Well, yeah, but so it's supposed to be, click on Nextcloud.
So it's supposed to be an easier way for developers to develop packages.
Yeah.
Because creating a Debian package is kind of hard.
Yes.
And creating Snap is really not that hard. And there is this other thing called Flatpak, I think.
Yeah, I know Flatpak.
And there is also Flatpak stuff for Nextcloud.
Yeah, so
Just
now
an
you also have a
example,
choice between packages, Dockers, Docker containers, Snaps, and Flatpaks.
Just an idea. So like,
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. It's just that I'm highlighting that there are very many ways of doing things, and not all easy, but they're very, very important to the end user. So yeah, I hope it works.
Because check it out.
This didn't work. This didn't work for me, but no, in the end it did.
We do have time for another short question.
No.
Anyone? No?
No.
Okay, then I'd like to thank Edgar for this interesting speech.
Thank you very much for having me.